The woman who answered his job ad wasn't supposed to exist, and by the time he learned why, it was already too late to save his heart. A lone rancher named Caleb Ward, haunted by a 6-year-old accusation of murder and theft, receives a mysterious letter from someone calling herself Clara Wynn, offering to work at his ranch. He never placed any advertisement, yet the handwriting feels deliberate, as if someone knew his exact address, his past, and his solitude. When Clara steps off the train, snow swirling like ash around her figure, Caleb realizes the letter has dragged his buried past back into the light. Clara is no ordinary drifter. She's the daughter of the very judge who once tried to hang him. What begins as an uneasy alliance in a storm soon spirals into a desperate struggle for truth and survival. When 5 armed riders arrive demanding justice for a crime Caleb swears he never committed. Beneath the gunfire, Clara will uncover the lie that destroyed both their families, a secret hidden in her father's dying words and sealed in an old music box she carries unknowingly. And by the end, when the smoke clears over Ward Ranch, she'll learn that the man her father condemned might be the only one capable of saving her life and claiming her heart. The storm hit the Colorado foothills without mercy. 1885, a year, when the wind carried more secrets than words. Caleb Ward stood on the porch of his ranch house, coat collar turned up against the cutting cold, watching the clouds roll low and heavy across the mountains. The Ward Ranch was no empire, just 200 acres of stubborn land carved from rock and snow, a small house of rough-hewn timber, a barn leaning slightly east, and fences scarred by winter. But it was his. Every splinter and nail earned through sweat and silence. Inside, the fire cracked weakly. A single lantern burned beside a letter, the one written in a woman's hand, with graceful strokes that didn't belong in a rancher's world. Clara Wynn, she had signed. She claimed experience with horses and livestock, that she could cook and work from dawn till dusk. Caleb hadn't asked for help, hadn't spoken to anyone in town for weeks. Yet somehow, she knew where to find him. He looked out toward the road, where the snow began to fall thicker, coating the fences and the lonely cottonwoods that lined the path to Pine Ridge Station. Tomorrow she would arrive, a stranger walking straight into the ghost of his past. Somewhere beyond the hills, a train whistle cried, long and low, and Caleb Ward, a man who'd buried his name under guilt and rumor, had no idea that the woman stepping off that train was about to unearth it all. The next afternoon, the train arrived in a roar of steam and grit. Caleb stood by his wagon, boots sinking into the slush, eyes narrowing against the haze. He expected a young man stepping off with a hat pulled low, someone who could swing a hammer and herd cattle. Instead, a woman in a navy blue traveling coat descended the iron steps, her posture straight, her chin lifted against the wind. Clara Wynn. She carried one small case, the kind that spoke of long roads and little comfort. Her hair, chestnut and pinned tight beneath a modest hat, caught flecks of snow that sparkled like ash in the light. When she saw him, she didn't hesitate. "Mr. Ward?" Caleb removed his hat, words slow to form. "That's right, ma'am. You must be Miss Wynn." "I am. Thank you for meeting me." Her tone was calm, practiced, but there was a tremor beneath it, the kind a person learns to hide only after too many goodbyes. Caleb frowned. "Miss Wynn, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never placed any advertisement." For the first time her composure cracked. "You didn't?" "No, ma'am." Clara looked back toward the departing train, her breath ghosting white. "Then it seems I've come a long way for nothing." Caleb saw it then, the exhaustion, the quiet panic she tried to bury. Something unspoken weighed behind her eyes. Against his better judgment, he said, "The next eastbound train won't come for 3 days. You might as well stay until then." Jeanne. And as the snow began to thicken, Clara Wynn stepped into the life of the man her father had once sworn to destroy. By dawn the next morning, the ranch lay buried under 2 feet of snow. The world outside was a whispering blur of white and wind. But inside the Ward Ranch house, the scent of coffee and frying bacon drifted through the air. Caleb blinked in surprise as he entered the kitchen. Clara Wynn was already there, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, moving between stove and table like she'd belonged there all her life. "You didn't need to do that," he muttered. She turned, a hint of defiance flashing in her eyes. "You said you needed help. I'm proving I can be useful." Caleb studied her, the way her hands moved, steady but deliberate. "I said you could stay, Miss Wynn. Not work yourself to the bone." "I'd rather earn my place," she replied quietly. "It makes the waiting easier." They ate in silence, though it wasn't the cold kind. Outside, the storm began to ease, but inside, the tension thickened, the kind born from two strangers who'd seen too much of the world to trust easily. By midday, Caleb had her out in the pasture, fixing fences. He expected her to quit after the first hour, but she matched him blow for blow, her determination burning against the snow like flame against frost. When she paused to catch her breath, she asked without looking up, "You're wondering why I came?" I reckon that thought crossed my mind. "My father died 6 months ago," she said, driving another post into the frozen ground. "The farm went to my brother. His wife made sure I wasn't welcome. I saw your advertisement in the paper, thought it was a chance to start over." Caleb's hammer froze mid-swing. "Which paper?" "The Millbrook Gazette," she replied. That name cut through him like a blade. He turned, jaw tightening. "Millbrook?" "Yes. You know it?" He swallowed hard, the wind carrying ghosts between them. "I passed through once, a long time ago." She looked at him, then long enough to see the shadow behind his eyes. Something unsaid flickered there, a memory half buried in regret. That evening, when the snow relented, Caleb sat by the fire, unable to sleep. Clara's voice echoed faintly from the kitchen as she hummed an old tune, a melody too familiar. He leaned forward, listening. It was the same song the Millbrook stagecoach driver used to whistle before the robbery. He rose abruptly. "Where did you learn that?" Clara froze mid-note. "My father used to play it on his music box." "Why?" Caleb's pulse thudded in his ears. "Because that tune was the last thing I heard before 3 men were shot dead on the Millbrook line." Her expression hardened. "You were there?" He didn't answer right away. The crackle of the fire filled the silence between them. "I was accused of it. Your father was the one who tried to hang me." Clara went pale. "Judge Elias Wynn?" Caleb nodded once. "He never believed I was innocent. And now his daughter walks through my door on the same week. Strangers start nosing around my land. You tell me, Miss Wynn, is that coincidence?" Her voice trembled. "I didn't know." He stepped closer, eyes sharp as gunmetal. "Then, who sent you?" "I told you I saw an ad. An ad I never placed." The wind howled outside, rattling the shutters like a warning. Clara clenched her fists. "I don't know who sent it, but I swear I'm not your enemy." Caleb studied her for a long, burning moment, then exhaled through his teeth. "Maybe not, but someone wants us in the same place for a reason." Before either could speak again, the sound of hooves shattered the silence. 5 riders emerged through the snow, their torches cutting through the storm's gray light. Caleb grabbed his rifle. "Stay inside." Clara's hand went instinctively to the shotgun resting by the door. "Not happening. Damn it, woman, this isn't your fight. It is if they're here because of me." Caleb gave her a look, part anger, part reluctant respect, then swung the door open. The lead rider was a broad man with a streak of white through his beard, his coat glinting with frost. He dismounted slowly. "Evan and Ward," he said. "Been a while." Caleb's grip tightened. "Marshal Davis." Davis smiled thinly. "You remember me then? That'll save time." He reached into his coat, pulling out a folded document. "You're wanted for questioning back in Missouri. New evidence says you're not as innocent as folks thought." Clara's heart pounded. "He's lying," she whispered. Caleb's voice came low, steady, dangerous. "You've got no authority here." Davis shrugged. "Authority's a matter of who's holding the gun." The air snapped taut. One of Davis's men reached for his holster. Clara raised the shotgun, her voice clear over the wind. "I'd think twice before you try that." The men froze. Davis's eyes narrowed. "You've got spirit, miss. What's your name?" "Clara Wynn." Recognition flared in his eyes, a cruel, knowing smirk. "Wynn? Well, I'll be damned. The judge's little girl. Seems fate's got a sense of humor." Caleb's jaw clenched. "You leave her out of this." "Oh, I intend to," Davis said, swinging into his saddle. "But not before I get what I came for. You can't bury the past forever, Ward. It has a way of digging itself back up." As the riders disappeared into the storm, Clara lowered the shotgun, trembling. Who is he? The reason I lost everything, Caleb said quietly. And the man who'd kill us both to keep the truth buried. The fire hissed behind them as snow howled through the night. For the first time, Clara understood this ranch wasn't a refuge. It was the center of a storm 6 years in the making. And now she was part of it. The morning broke clean and white, but peace never returned with the sunrise. The storm had passed, yet its echo lingered in the silence between Caleb Ward and Clara Wynn. Neither spoke much that day. He rode out to check the fences while she cleaned the kitchen, each pretending the night's confrontation hadn't changed everything. But it had. When Caleb returned that evening, he found her sitting by the fire, turning something small over in her hands. "It was my father's," she said softly, holding up a music box, brass edges worn smooth, the inlay faded from years of touch. "He told me once that it held the tune he played when he wanted to think clearly. You said you recognized it." Caleb stared at the box as if it might bite him. "I do. The driver on the Millbrook stage was humming that exact song before the robbery, before they were shot." Clara's fingers tightened on the lid. "You think my father had something to do with it?" "No," Caleb said slowly. "I think your father discovered something he wasn't supposed to. And Davis made sure he never spoke of it." Before Clara could answer, hoofbeats thundered outside. She shot up, fear slicing through her chest. Caleb crossed to the window. "Easy," he said. "It's Jed." Jed was one of his ranch hands, young, loyal, too brave for his own good. He burst through the door. Snow plastered to his coat. "They're back," he gasped. "Davis and 5 others, camped east of the creek, said they'll come for you by nightfall." Caleb grabbed his rifle. "Miguel, still with you. He's keeping watch from the ridge. But they've got more men now, 7, maybe 8. Clara looked from one to the other. "You can't fight them all." Caleb gave her a grim smile. "Don't need to. Just need to survive long enough to know what they're after." On. He opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of yellowed papers, tied with leather string. Clara recognized the handwriting instantly, her father's. She froze. "Where did you get that?" "Copied them," he said quietly. "6 years ago, when your father tried to hang me, I had to know what he was building his case on." She stepped closer, scanning the pages. Witness statements, accounts of stolen money, the names of dead men, and one name repeated in the margins, over and over. "Marshall Davis. My father suspected him," she breathed. Caleb nodded. "Didn't have proof. Davis controlled the evidence, said $300,000 was stolen, but only 42 was ever found. So he kept the rest. And killed anyone who could prove it," Caleb finished. "Your father was getting close. That's why Davis still wants these papers." Before they could speak further, the door creaked open. A shadow stepped inside. Clara spun, shotgun ready, then lowered it when she saw a familiar face. Thomas Welling. He looked different from the polished man she'd once known in Millbrook. Dust on his coat, exhaustion in his eyes, but his voice was the same, low, persuasive, dangerous. "Evening, Clara." "Ward." Caleb's hand went to his holster. "You've got 10 seconds to explain why you're here." Thomas raised both palms. "I came to warn you. Davis isn't alone anymore. He's got backing men from Denver, ex-lawmen. They think you've got something worth killing for." Clara narrowed her eyes. "How do you know that?" Thomas hesitated. "Because I was with them." Caleb's expression hardened. "Then why switch sides?" "Because I found out what Davis really wants." His gaze shifted to Clara. "It's not just you, Clara. It's the documents your father left behind." Caleb stepped forward, rifle still lowered but ready. "You knew about them?" Thomas nodded. "Everyone did. Davis, your brother. Half the men in Millbrook whispered about them. Elias Wynn kept journals, evidence of the payroll robbery, who planned it, and where the rest of the money disappeared to." Clara's voice trembled. "My father's journals were destroyed after his death." "No," Thomas said. "He sent them away to his informant, a man named Jacob Mercer." Caleb froze. "Mercer, you knew him," Thomas said flatly. "He was your half-brother, wasn't he?" The silence that followed was heavy as the snow outside. "Yes," Caleb said at last. "And Davis killed him." Thomas nodded. "That's what the journals prove. Mercer found out Davis was the mastermind behind the heist, and Davis silenced him before he could talk. But Mercer didn't die empty-handed. He passed the evidence on to someone before the shooting." Clara frowned. Who? Thomas looked at her. Your father. She shook her head. Then the papers my father hid are what Davis wants now, Thomas finished. And he'll burn this ranch to the ground to get them. Caleb turned toward the window. Then let him come. Thomas stepped forward. Don't be a fool, Ward. There's too many. You'll die, and she'll die with you. Caleb met his gaze with quiet fire. Then we die standing. Before Thomas could argue, a shot rang out. Splinters of glass exploded beside them. Clara screamed as Caleb pulled her down, returning fire through the shattered window. The night erupted in gunfire. Jed, Caleb shouted. I'm here, came the reply from outside. They've got us surrounded. Thomas ducked behind the stove, drawing his revolver. We need to fall back. Not until they stop shooting at my damn house, Caleb growled, firing again. Through the chaos, Clara crawled toward the table, clutching the music box. She turned it in her hands desperately, trying to steady her breath, and heard something click inside. A faint metallic rattle that didn't belong. What the hell? She whispered. She twisted the inlay panel, and a hidden compartment slid open beneath the lid. Inside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. On its front, written in her father's handwriting, for Elizabeth Wynn, when the truth can no longer hide. Clara's eyes widened. Caleb, she whispered, shoving it toward him. He tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside were letters and coordinates. The missing $300,000. Proof of Davis's crime. Caleb's voice was hushed, reverent. This is what he killed for. Outside, the gunfire paused. Then came Davis's voice, echoing across the yard. Ward, you've got something that belongs to me. Hand it over, and maybe I'll let the lady live. Caleb looked to Clara. He knows. Thomas glanced toward the door. We can't hold them here. Clara shook her head fiercely. Then we take the fight to him. Thomas blinked. You? Her voice was steel. My father died chasing truth. I'm not hiding from it. Caleb's lips curved into something between pride and fear. Then saddle up. Moments later, under the bleeding glow of dawn, the three of them rode out, Clara, Caleb, and Thomas, toward the old mining office east of town, where Davis had set his camp. Snow still clung to the ridges, the world painted in cold firelight. As they approached, Caleb said, We end it tonight. Clara's heart pounded. And if we don't? He looked at her, and for the first time, there was no anger in his eyes, only something raw and final. Then at least we'll face the truth together. The wind carried their breath away as they disappeared into the storm's wake, three souls bound by blood, betrayal, and a truth too dangerous to stay buried. And somewhere, deep in the dark, the music box began to play again. The moon hung over the valley like a pale coin, throwing shards of silver across the snow. The old mining office stood at the edge of the ridge, abandoned, silent, except for the faint glow of lamplight bleeding through its cracks. Caleb Ward, Clara Wynn, and Thomas Welling dismounted behind a cluster of pines. The air smelled of cold iron and smoke. Caleb's voice was low. Two guards out front, one at the side. Davis will be inside. We get in, grab Mrs. Fielding, and end this. Meh. Thomas nodded. You're sure about that? Caleb's eyes hardened. I've been sure for 6 years. They split up. Thomas crept toward the front, while Caleb led Clara around back. The door was barred from within. Caleb pressed his shoulder to the frame, whispered, On 3. 1. 2. He kicked it open. The door crashed inward. The smell of whiskey and gun oil hit them first, then the sound of startled voices. 2 men at a table shot to their feet, hands going for their weapons. Caleb fired first. One went down. The other lunged forward. But Clara swung a shovel, catching him across the jaw. Guess I can handle myself after all, she said, breathless. Remind me not to argue with you, Caleb muttered. They found Mrs. Fielding tied to a chair in the back room, indignant but alive. Took you long enough, she scolded, even as Caleb cut her loose. Stay low, he ordered. We're not out yet. From the main room came the click of boots and the familiar, venomous drawl of Marshal Davis. Well, well. The prodigal rancher and the judge's darling. Just couldn't stay out of trouble, could you? Caleb stepped into the lamplight, rifle leveled. It ends tonight, Davis. Davis smiled a cold, wolfish thing. Oh, it does, but not the way you think. He gestured, and 2 more men appeared behind him, guns drawn. Drop it. Caleb didn't move. Then a shot cracked through the rafters. Thomas Welling, firing from the shadows. One of Davis's men fell. Chaos erupted. Gunfire tore through the air, splintering walls, kicking up dust. Clara dragged Mrs. Fielding to cover while Caleb and Davis circled each other through the haze. You took everything from me, Caleb shouted over the roar. I gave you a life, Ward 1 worth running from, Davis snarled. You should have stayed gone. Caleb fired. Davis stumbled, hit in the shoulder, but didn't fall. He lunged, knocking Caleb to the floor. The rifle clattered away. They grappled amid the smoke, fists landing like thunder. Clara watched, horror tightening her throat. Then she saw the glint of Davis's revolver, half buried under the debris. Without thinking, she dove forward, sliding across the dirt. Her hand closed on cold steel, just as Davis raised his knife. Clara, no, Caleb shouted. She fired. The shot echoed like judgment. Davis froze, eyes wide, then slumped backward, blood blooming across his coat. Silence fell, a silence so deep it swallowed the wind itself. Caleb sat there for a moment, chest heaving, then looked up at her. You saved my life. Clara's hands shook, the pistol still warm in her grip. No, she whispered. I finished what my father started. Thomas emerged from the shadows, one arm bleeding. You two all right? More or less, Caleb said. He turned to Davis's fallen body, the lamplight flickering across his lifeless face. 6 years he made me live like a ghost. That debt's finally paid. Thomas limped forward. The marshal will need evidence. Clara reached into her coat, pulling out her father's papers. He'll have it, every word of the truth. Thomas nodded. Then my job's done. He met her gaze, a trace of regret softening his voice. For what it's worth, I never meant to use you, Clara. I know, she said quietly, but you did anyway. By dawn, the territorial marshal had arrived with a detachment of deputies. The scene was chaos, Davis's men disarmed, the stolen payroll documents spread across the desk like a confession. Caleb and Clara gave their statements side by side, the first rays of sunlight spilling across the snow outside. When it was over, the marshal clapped Caleb on the shoulder. Your name will be cleared, son. Davis'll hang for what he did, or would've, if you hadn't beaten me to it. Note. Caleb managed a weary smile. Reckon he earned it. The marshal turned to Clara. Your father raised a brave woman, Miss Wynn. She looked toward Caleb. He taught me to stand for the truth. The rest I learned here. As the marshal's men rode off with the evidence, the valley fell quiet again. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. Mrs. Fielding brewed coffee, as if nothing had happened. Thomas mounted his horse, tipping his hat to Clara. Be seeing you, Miss Wynn. Well, not if I see you first, she replied. He grinned, then rode away into the pale morning light. Caleb stood on the porch, the rising sun gilding his face. Clara joined him, her hand brushing his. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Caleb said, You could head east now. Back to Millbrook. Start over. She smiled faintly. I think I already have. He turned, searching her eyes. You sure? Clara nodded. My father chased justice all his life. I think he'd want me to stay where it finally found us. Caleb's voice softened. Then stay not as a guest, as a partner. The wind stirred her hair, carrying away the last chill of winter. I'd like that, she whispered. And as the sun climbed higher over the white fields, the ghosts of Millbrook finally faded, leaving only 2 souls who'd fought through the storm to find each other in its calm. 2 months later, spring rolled through the Colorado Valley like a promise finally kept. The last of the snow melted into the creek beds, and wildflowers spilled across the hills in waves of gold and violet. Ward Ranch, once a place haunted by silence and suspicion, now hummed with life, the ring of hammers, the soft call of cattle, and laughter echoing through the open fields. Clara Wynn, or as the townsfolk had begun calling her, Miss Clara Ward, stood on the porch in the pale morning Sunday. Below her, Caleb was directing Miguel and Jed as they loaded hay into the new barn, his sleeves rolled to the elbows, his voice steady and sure. He looked nothing like the haunted man she'd met that snowbound night. The guilt that once clouded his eyes was gone, replaced by quiet confidence, the look of a man free at last. When he spotted her watching, he smiled the kind of smile that undid all the miles she'd traveled to reach this place. "You're staring again," he teased, climbing the steps toward her. "Only because I still don't believe any of this is real," she said softly. He brushed his thumb over her hand. "It's as real as the land under our feet. Took a few bullets and a storm to make it so, but I'll take that trade." Inside, Mrs. Fielding's voice rose in mock irritation. "If you two don't come in soon, your breakfast'll turn to leather." They laughed, a sound warm enough to outshine the morning. Caleb looked out across the valley, where the sunlight poured over the fence line. "Your father's papers cleared my name," he said, "but you're the one who gave me my life back." Clara leaned against him, her voice quiet but certain. "We saved each other, Caleb, just in different ways." The wind carried their words away, across the open prairie, past the place where ghosts once lingered. The ranch stood proud beneath the mountains, rebuilt, reborn. As the day stretched long and golden, Clara glanced at the horizon. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if I hadn't answered that letter?" Caleb smiled, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "Every damn day." He paused, eyes bright beneath the brim of his hat. "And every day I thank whoever wrote it because it brought you to me." The wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying the faint, familiar tune of an old music box, the song that had once marked guilt, now reborn as grace. And on that porch, beneath a wide western sky, two hearts that had fought through blood, snow, and truth finally found what neither had dared to hope for: a home, a peace, and a love that would outlast the storms.